In this video, I want to list some of the pros and cons to going to college before joining the Army, as well as some of those pros and cons to going to college after the Army. And that video starts right now. These pros and cons are obviously my opinion. So there could be a chance where some of these pros could be a con to you, or a con could be a pro to you, you know, all that kind of a thing. So keep that in consideration. Also, a lot of these pros and cons are probably only going to apply to someone who wants to join active duty Army, as if you want to go Reserves National Guard, maybe these don't apply to you. Because if you're going Reserves National Guard, you can probably do both. You can be in the Army plus go into college, so some of these aren't going to apply to you. So this is mostly probably for individuals that are looking to go active duty as far as what are the pros and cons. So let's get into this. Now we're going to start off with before you join the Army. What if you want to go to college before joining the Army? What are some of the pros and the cons related to that? And probably some of these cons could be probably rolled into the same kind of category, but I wanted to explain them separately. So starting off with a pro to going to college before you join the Army is that you're probably going to get some good life experience before joining the Army. A lot of the individuals joining the Army are straight out of high school. They're going from living with their parents to now being in the Army. They're 18, 19 years old, but you have already experienced life a little bit by going to college first. You have that knowledge of maybe having an apartment to yourself, maybe having to pay bills, maybe having, you know, that freedom of being away from your parents, where these other individuals, they're experiencing it for the first time, and so maybe you're more mature than they are. Now, kind of going into that, you also have a con though, and that is that it might cause you to change your mind about wanting to join the Army in the first place. Maybe not a big deal. It really just kind of depends on certain scenarios where if maybe you know your dream is to join the Army because your grandparents, your father, your whoever in your family was in the military, in the Army, and you want to follow in that tradition, maybe getting that kind of taste of the freedom and being a college student and everything kind of turns you away from even wanting to be restricted and be in the military or in the Army. Maybe it works out better. Maybe, you know, it's a great life not joining the Army type of thing, and you're glad you didn't. Or maybe there are certain reasons where you're just like, man, now I have regret. And now later in life, you're like, I wonder what it would have been like if maybe I just spent maybe 4 years, 5 years, a little bit of time in the Army, and then pursued what I'm doing now. But now a pro is that college credits can actually get you some rank. So you can come into the Army with a little bit of rank and not have to start from the very bottom. An associate's degree, that can get you private first class or E3, and a bachelor's degree can get you E4 or a specialist, or you can choose to go the officer route and go to OCS and become an officer, or if you're already doing that in college anyways, to do ROTC, then you get to come in the Army with some rank and be an officer. While you might still get treated the same, like if you're coming in as a PFC or a specialist, as you know, those brand new privates, because you're still brand new, you're not making that brand new pay. So you get to come in at a higher pay bracket, you know, that's a little bit nicer than having to start off making E1 or E2 pay. Now, a con is that a lot of these colleges usually have like job placement programs and everything. So if you're doing some degree that you're super interested in, and they're telling you that, hey, after you get done, you've graduated and everything, there's these companies that would probably be interested in hiring you, and maybe some of those companies are even reaching out to you because you're getting good grades. Now you're like, well, do I really want to still join the Army now? I mean, I can go off and do this great job. So it kind of leads back to that earlier kind of con type of thing, but for a different reason, where, you know, maybe you have expectations because of family history to join the military, join the Army type of thing. But now it's kind of like, do I really want to make that decision to join the Army when this company is offering me an amazing job, and if I turn it down now, I may not get that opportunity after I get out of the Army. So now you're kind of in that tough situation. If you're in the scenario where, you know, you're just going to college because you're not sure what you want to do, and that leads to something great, and now you don't need to go to the Army, then maybe it's a pro. But for some individuals, maybe the Army was their goal in life because of this reason, whatever that reason might be. But a pro to go into college first is if you, let's say, build up some college debt, you know, you got some student loans, for example, right? Well, the Army will pay off those student loans up to a certain amount. So they have certain criteria. I think you have to do like more than 3 or 4 years, something like that. I don't remember what the criteria is, but nonetheless, they do have this criteria where if you have student loan debt because you went to college before joining the Army, well, they give you this incentive to, hey, join the Army and we'll pay off your student loans. You do kind of take away from your GI Bill, I think is how it works. So you don't usually get to like go to college, rack up some student loans, and then have the Army pay off those student loans, and then also still get the GI Bill that I'll actually kind of talk about a little bit later on to go to college after the Army. They do take away from that kind of benefit though. Now, one last one, which is a con for going to college before you go into the Army is that you might meet that special someone and not even want to join the Army in the first place now. Sometimes it happens, you meet that special someone in college, that's your soulmate, maybe you even already start a family type of thing, and now you have to ask yourself the question, do I want to go off to basic training for 10 weeks, then AIT for however many months it is for my AIT, and be away from this family that I've just now created while in college, or this boyfriend, girlfriend, or this fiance type of thing. Sometimes it happens, you meet that special someone in college, that's your soulmate, maybe you even already start a family type of thing, and now you have to ask yourself the question, do I want to go off to basic training for 10 weeks, then AIT for however many months it is for my AIT, and be away from this family that I've just now created while in college, or this boyfriend, girlfriend, or this fiance type of thing. Because that also could maybe even rush you into marriage, because you're like, well, is this person going to want to follow me over to my duty assignment? Maybe they like it here, they have family in this area, they may not want to follow me over to that duty assignment. Added stress, maybe you rush into that marriage so that way the Army is paying for that kind of a scenario so you can get that BAH and that BAS to be able to get a place together when you're at that duty assignment. So maybe those kinds of things can throw off those plans. Before we move on to the pros and cons for going to college after serving in the Army, I want to mention this very special Grunt Style shirt that I'm wearing in today's video. Did you know the Grunt Style's tradition is that their website will be closed for all purchases on Memorial Day? Now, this gives you a full month to get this very special edition shirt without any pressure. But you need to know that this special edition Memorial Day shirt is full price, but it is for a good reason. That is because all profits of this shirt go to Children of Fallen Patriots, which is a great organization that provides college scholarships to children that lost a parent while serving in the US military. You could still use the promo code CHAOSARMY on your first purchase to get 25% off, pick out some cool Grunt Style shirts that you really like that are awesome, and then make a second purchase separate from that one to get this shirt at full price and help out with a great cause. So make sure you check out the links down in the description box to visit Grunt Style, as well as a link to learn about how Grunt Style is honoring our fallen. Let's get back into it, shall we? Moving into the first one, which is a pro, and that is you can use the GI Bill to go to school after you get out of the Army. Whether that's 10 years, retirement, 4 years, I think you have to do at least 3 years to qualify for the GI Bill, but they have a couple different options for either the Montgomery GI Bill or the post 9/11 GI Bill that pays for your schooling. Not only does it pay for your schooling, you usually have like some kind of like BAH, they'll pay you a little bit of money to kind of help you with certain bills and kind of keep up on things. So you can utilize those funds to pay for the schooling as well as still getting paid while you're going to school to kind of help out with other bills. But a con to going to college after the Army, depending on how long you serve in the Army, is that you might be that old man or that old lady in college. I definitely experienced that because let's say, especially like, for my scenario, 10 plus years, maybe you do 20 plus years, whatever the thing is, and then decide you want to go to college. Well, a lot of those college students probably, depending on the college you go to, are probably 18, 19-year-old kids that just graduated high school, maybe even still live with their parents. And now here you are, this individual that's, maybe 30 years old, in their 30s kind of a thing, maybe 40s maybe, and going to college. It definitely felt weird for me. I was not even old really, I guess I was only 30 years old, but nonetheless, it's pretty old when you're around 18, 19-year-olds. You got this 30-year-old guy going to college with these 18, 19-year-olds, then you definitely feel like the old person there. I'll give you one quick little story and then we'll move on to the next pro, but I remember on the first day of one of the classes, they wanted us to go around and introduce ourselves to everybody. So everybody's kind of going around, and most of the stories that people are going around are just people talking about they graduated high school last year, they have a goal to get an education, do this, and then kind of moving on to the next person. So when it did finally get to me, someone who has my, kind of history with the military and everything, I kind of gave them a little spiel, I did 10 plus years, deployed to Iraq twice, and now I'm out of the Army and getting an education. So everybody was kind of like, oh man, that's a lot more than we've done in the last several years. Especially when it had to go to the next guy, because the next guy was like, I don't know how to follow that up. I just graduated high school last year. I still live with my mom and dad. I'm just here to go to school so I can get an education and then move out. It was something along those lines. He definitely kind of felt weird trying to follow up from my story of serving 10 years and deploying to Iraq twice during Operation Iraqi Freedom and then going to that. So it was definitely a little awkward. But from that, let's move on to a pro to going to college after serving in the Army, and that's that some of your military experience can actually count for college credits and get you out of some classes. You can sit down with an individual and they can evaluate, how much you did in the Army, what kinds of, classes or schools you went to, and all sorts of other things, and try to see if that experience equates to some college classes to get some credits and make it just less requirements you have to do to be able to graduate. To give you an example, like for me, right? I had like the NCO Academy, my time in the Army and everything. I was being an NCO and everything, to where they, waived certain classes based on that experience that I had. For my degree, I did television and radio, and one of the requirements I had to do was public speaking. But because I was a non-commissioned officer, I went to the NCO Academy and everything, they waived public speaking, so I didn't even have to do that class. Also, because they know you have to do a lot of fitness, you have fitness tests and everything like that, they kind of added some extra credit type of scores, or actually they're elective credits for like a gym class or a PE class type of thing. Because a lot of times with your degree and everything, you have some kind of other credits you have to use towards electives, and a lot of other stuff just kind of applied towards elective things. So I didn't have to do any electives, I just could focus on just the core classes that I needed to graduate. So there were maybe about 3, maybe 4 classes I was able to get out of because of my military background. My military history was able to translate over into college credits that they gave me credit for. A con though is that you might not get to experience that college life. You may know stories of people, going off to college, partying, living in the dorms, having a good time, frat houses, joining a fraternity, all sorts of stuff, and you might not get to experience that. I mean, depending on how many years you serve in the Army, you might have better responsibilities. You can't be going off and partying with a fraternity when maybe you got a spouse at home, maybe you got kids at home, because you were in the Army for a while and you found that special someone and you had a couple kids with them or whatever, and you got to take care of that family. You can't be going off and partying like you maybe used to. I mean, hopefully you don't. You got more responsibilities, to life than going off and partying if you have a spouse and some children to take care of. But nonetheless, you're not going to be going off to probably go hang out in the dorms, I would think, and doing all the other college life stuff if you probably already experienced a lot of time in the Army and have more responsibilities than maybe you used to have when you were like an 18, 19-year-old going off to college type of a scenario. Some people try, and maybe it works out for you, but for the most part, usually by then, especially you've done several years in the Army type of thing, and now you're going to college, you probably got a little bit more responsibilities in your life and better things to do than to live that college life. A pro is that the schoolwork might be a lot easier, especially like things like English, computer classes, PE, that kind of a thing, because you understand better than you did as the individual when you were like 18, 19 years old, unless you got dumber from being in the Army. Maybe that could be a possibility sometimes. But nonetheless, especially like you were a non-commissioned officer, right? Maybe, you had to do counseling statements, maybe NCOERs. So you're built up some pretty good English skills from having to write those, counseling statements for soldiers and everything like that, and being constantly corrected by higher ranking individuals to use better grammar, use better sentence structures and all sorts of things. So you probably got pretty decent at English, hopefully. And this college class that you have to take on English is probably pretty easy because you know a lot of the stuff already. Computers was definitely one that I remember because you have to use computers a lot sometimes, to type up counselings, do certain kind of work, maybe, do classes, whatever the kind of thing is, and you probably get pretty familiar with using computers over the years anyways. And so these computer classes, sometimes it might be required in your kind of degree, probably pretty easy to do. One of the big ones is if you have to do like a PE class, some kind of physical fitness type of class, probably can ace that. You probably, hopefully, are pretty skilled in knowing how to structure some physical training, how to do physical fitness, compared to these individuals that, have to do it. They're straight out of high school, they're 18, 19 years old, and they're struggling to do whatever the fitness things are in this PE class, but you've been doing Army combat fitness tests and all sorts of other things, and 12-mile ruck marches and all sorts of stuff, so it's probably a cakewalk for you. So some of that college classes might be pretty easy because of the experience you got from spending some time in the Army. Now, one last one, and that is a con to going to college after serving in the Army, and that is you have more responsibility. So it's harder to focus on your schoolwork. You need to support a family, you got a mortgage payment, you got a car payment, you got all sorts of stuff that you have to focus on while still trying to juggle college. I kind of had that scenario with the last year of my college that I was doing because I had the job that I currently do now, and I had to work, so I had to do night classes. So I had to manage work and then go to night classes. Another thing too is if you're using the GI Bill, I mean, sure, they pay for your schooling, they pay you a little bit extra money for, BAH type of thing, but it's probably not enough to cover a mortgage, a car payment, medical expenses if you have to, do that kind of route because you don't have, full retirement benefits. Supporting children, a wife, whatever the case is, that GI Bill money is not going to be enough for a lot of those scenarios. If you're a single individual when you get out, maybe it's just fine for you to be able to manage that. But if you've got a little bit more responsibilities, like a family to take care of, that GI Bill money is not going to be enough to solely just rely on that alone. So that can be a little bit challenging. It's a little bit harder to focus on, homework, things you got to do and everything, while still making sure that you provide for your family. Maybe you still have to get a job. So now you have to go and get a job, and then at the nighttime do night classes, or get a job that's part-time to where you're doing, schooling on certain days and then your job the other days. And so that takes away from you to be able to work on assignments. So it can be a little bit challenging, if you have those responsibilities getting out of the Army and you're trying to go to college. So now that you've heard some of my pros and cons, what do you think you would rather do and why? Would you rather go to college first, get that college experience, then join the Army? Or would you rather experience the Army first and then after getting out of the Army, go to college? Let me know down in the comment section down below, and let me know why you would rather go that path. Now, for me, I didn't go to college before going to the Army, mainly because I didn't have good grades. My parents probably couldn't afford to send me to college. They probably could have gotten grants, but I really didn't know that whole aspect of college at that time, and they didn't really either, so they didn't know about that. But I didn't think that I would be able to get any kind of scholarship. My parents couldn't afford that, so I figured, maybe I'll just join the Army first and then get out and go to college. Now, the Army actually changed my perspective of what I was going to do, because I originally wanted to be an auto mechanic and hopefully work my way up to being an individual who works at NASCAR, rebuilding engines type of thing. But being in the Army, I actually lost interest for wanting to work on vehicles and everything, to where it shifted my entire focus. I still went to college afterwards, but not for what I originally wanted to do. Earlier, I was talking about, a con where, you maybe met that special someone while in the Army. Now you get out of the Army, you want to go to college, and it's kind of tough to kind of balance, the responsibilities of being a good spouse and providing for your family while still trying to go to college at the same time. But prior to that, maybe you want to know, what is it like to have a relationship while in the Army? We'll have a video on that. So if you want to learn about that, check that video out right here. Hit that thumbs up on the video. Make sure you're subscribed. Links down in the description box, social media, and all that fun stuff. Thanks for watching. I'm Christopher Chaos, and I'll see you next time. See ya.